My name is Jesai Chandler. I work with Spirit Forces, and through the years doing readings and consultations with clients around the world, I get asked on a regular basis to have to explain or to document somehow how spirits work with us and how we have access to spirit realms and energies. If you can imagine that, and the way that the spirits and the angels describe it is that it's very much like how our technologies work with television, radio, telephones. Depending on the frequency that you have access to will determine the type of spirits or the type of information that you can gain access to. If you, for instance, have a lower frequency vibration, and that would give you access maybe to like local television or local radio stations. If you have a cable or kind of a satellite reception or frequency, then that would give you access to a slightly higher vibration, and then you have optics and different levels. Like so, the higher your vibration, the higher and the more information that you may have access to on a higher frequency. And the ability to do that depends on the intention that you carry inside and the intention you have inside of yourself, which is about, as an angel described to me, being in a state of non-reaction gives you access to the highest realms. And so when we look at the emotions are actually viruses that infect the feeling body. We're trained in our world that love is an emotion, but actually it's not. Love is your feeling body. It defines who you are as a being and as a person in the world. And we're all striving to find that in some way, but we're given it as a goal to achieve through a job, through work. It's like, who are you going to become through marriage, through families? We may find these things through those types of those disciplines, but really it's if we're listening to that inner voice and trusting that inner voice, then we might find that we have a very different world that forms around us. If we imagine that love, like as children live in their feeling bodies. They're surrounded by love and confidence, trust, peace. All of these things are one within us. When we feel one of those things, we feel all of them. Emotions are viruses that infect the feeling body. And in traditional medicines, we learn that basically emotions are evil spirits that will infect the feeling body and prevent you from feeling who you are and becoming who you truly are. And so we see that these things affect the frequency or the vibration of our feeling bodies. And so the more that our feeling bodies become diminished and lowered, then we only have access to maybe darker forces, darker energies, or lower frequencies, lower energies. And as we come more to that place of non-reaction within ourselves, we have access to the finer, the higher levels, where we might experience more peace. We have greater abilities to accomplish things and to do things with less effort. We end up with more synchronicity taking place in our lives than we might experience at a lower frequency. And so the word trust is a very important word. That it's when we have that inner trust within ourselves, then it gives us access sometimes to be able to have access to higher frequencies. And the idea of trust doesn't come from the mind. And this is where there's a misconception in our world where positive thinking will create positive outcomes. But actually it's the opposite. When we're trying to have positive thoughts, it usually means that inside, in your core, you're feeling worry or stress or fears or angers. And so the things that arise into the mind our condition of what's in the heart or in the core of the body, in the center. And that's what we will tend to manifest. And so when people are wishing, and the word to pray means to practice, that's all it means. And so if we're continually experiencing anger and fear, then that becomes our practice. It becomes the prayer, basically, that we manifest in the world. And the more, it takes a lot more energy to produce a negative effect than it does a positive effect. And so as children, we'll see that they're indoctrinated into thinking and logic, being trained out of their feeling bodies as they enter into school, going into grade 1, grade 2, and so forth. They're trained into linear ways of thinking, which takes them out of the feeling body, and it shuts off those two hemispheres. We have the two hemispheres of the brain should be yoked together and operate together, but when we focus just on one side of that, using that brain, we disengage the creative side that gives us ability to access the abilities that we possess and can have in our lives. I had met a man that told me he was the defense minister's top lawyer, one of them. And he said the entities that run the governments don't want enlightened beings. And so he said poison is put into your food and your water so that you can't feel anymore. And you're in a constant state of reaction, and as you're in a place of reaction, then it's much easier to control the masses. And he said you can't control an enlightened being. They are an entity unto themselves, and they don't want that. It was a very fascinating conversation. But here we are in the world, and there's a lot of fear in the world presently with what's going on in the world, and so we may find that the greatest virus and the greatest threat in our world right now is fear. And that fear, it's an interesting thing because fear has the same manifestation and the same symptoms as a virus might. It can cause shortness of breath, it can cause the body to become fevered, overheated, it can cause anxiety, upset stomachs. In traditional medicines, they say the longer that an emotion is allowed to be harbored in the body and the deeper that it can be rooted, the more it manifests in the tissue and the bone. And it's much more difficult then to resolve or expel that emotion from our beings. And this will be the first in a series of spirit forces, and thank you for listening, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.